Well, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're coming from. Welcome to, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're coming from. I think we are live now. Welcome to the Viterbi admission, undergraduate transfer admission live chat. My name is Paul Ledesma. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admission here for the Viterbi School. I'm joined by a few of my colleagues here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves as we allow you all in to see how we can answer some questions for you here in the transfer admission process.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Christine Shea. I'm an Associate Director of Undergrad Admission here in the Viterbi School. Really glad you guys were able to join us today, and we look forward to answering your questions.
And my name is Becky, and I am the Senior Assistant Director for Admission, working with incoming freshmen and also transfer students. And so I'm excited to answer any of your questions and make sure you get all your questions answered before that application deadline on February 1st.
Thank you, Becky, Christine, for joining us. It's possible we might have one more staff member joining us in a little bit, but if we don't, I think the three of us will be able to handle it. Already, we have a good number of viewers already jumped in, so welcome to the Transfer Admission live chat. A good majority of you have already submitted a number of questions on the form that's just below you, just below this video here. We already have hundreds of questions submitted. I'll tell you right now, there's no way we're going to answer every single one of those questions. However, a good number of those questions are just the same questions over and over again. So we're essentially going to be doing our best to consolidate those answers and give you some good summaries of what it is that you need to understand. There's some great questions about the common application and forms. There's great questions about test scores. There's questions about GPA. I think that comes up a lot. There's questions about financial aid. There's questions about how we review the application process. And I promise you we're going to cover practically everything you need to know in order to make sure you have the information you need in order to submit an application for the USC Viterbi School of Engineering. Just a real quick summary of our programs here, and then I'm going to hand it over to Christine to give you a brief summary as to how our transfer admission process works, which, to be honest with you, is likely going to answer a number of these questions up front, but we want to make sure we give you some good information up front and also allow some other people that may be joining late. The Viterbi School of Engineering here is one of the largest professional schools at USC. We have a very broad spectrum of academic programs in the engineering school. So no matter what university you might be at that you're looking to transfer in, what we've found is that whatever you're looking to study in the engineering school or in any engineering school, we practically offer. We have 10 different engineering disciplines and over 30 undergraduate programs. We offer bachelor's degrees in aerospace engineering, astronautical engineering, biomedical engineering, chemical engineering, civil engineering, computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering, environmental engineering, industrial and systems engineering, and mechanical engineering. And all of our degree programs are open to transfer students. Every one of our degree programs is open to transfer students. And if you're interested in studying one of those, you're welcome to apply by the application deadline of February 15th. Our programs are designed with a 50-50 split between theory and hands-on work. So a lot of engineering schools might describe themselves as a theoretical program, and other programs might be described as a hands-on program. We refuse to choose, and so we're going to give you the opportunity to make sure that you're getting a good in-depth understanding of theory while also getting your hands dirty in practical application of an engineering degree. Our undergraduate students go on to do a number of different things. The grand majority go straight into industry and employment, specifically in the engineering fields across a number of different engineering areas. And students go on into get graduate degrees as well. A thing that you might be interested in is our progressive degree program. So if you're interested in obtaining your bachelor's and your master's degree, we have a program that's a progressive degree program that allows you to complete your master's degree in typically just one additional year while you're here. And if you're looking to do that while you're a student here, you can become eligible while you start taking classes at USC. I think that's a good introduction to our program, so I want to hand it over to Christine to give you a brief overview as to how our transfer application process works, what we're looking for in the application, and how that differs from a lot of other universities, and how a lot of your preconceived notions of how you think you're supposed to be prepared might not be in line with what we're actually looking at.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Paul. So just to give you a quick overview of the application process, then I'm going to jump into what we're looking for. Most of you probably already know this. There are two things primarily that you need to submit by February 1st to have yourself considered for admission to USC. We need the common application and the USC writing supplement. Both of those are available through commonapp.org. So if you then, when you in the application, be sure to list one of the engineering majors as your first choice major. And that will ensure that we get to review you. Again, that's by February 1st. To the other things that can come in after February 1st include things like your transcripts from high school or college. If you're submitting an English proficiency exam, those can come in after February 1st. All that's due on the application deadline is the common application, the USC writing supplement. But your other pieces, again, like the transcripts from high school and college, those should be submitted soon after the application deadline. But it is okay. I know we had several questions about this before we jumped into this program today about, is it okay to submit transcripts after February 1st? Yes, it is. In terms of prep and what we're looking for, it's fairly straightforward. We're looking for applicants to have Calculus 2, that is required, and to complete the USC writing requirement. The USC writing requirement is typically fulfilled by taking 2 semesters of writing elsewhere. So for instance, if you're at a school that offers English 1B, we want you to get to English 1B. 1A. If they have English 1A, we want you to get to English 1B. So that's typically how you satisfy it. So we're at Calculus 2, the writing requirement are the 2 things that you need, and we strongly recommend that you have 2 semesters of a lab-based science under your belt as well when you apply. We do not, Paul mentioned that there are things that are different for USC when you apply as a transfer student. We do not have a minimum unit requirement. So that means that you don't even have to wait until you're at 60 units to apply to USC. You can apply with as little as 30 units to USC. If you're under 30 units, you just need to submit an SAT or ACT score. So that's why you'll hear of a lot of students who actually decide to transfer to USC early compared to other schools. You can transfer after just 1 year to USC as a transfer student. I think those are the main things. Becky, did I miss anything?
No, I mean, just meeting those sort of class requirements. Calculus 2 is really important. Science is really important. And of course, the writing requirement. And then beyond that, just doing well in those courses also. So we have no GPA requirement, but definitely having strong grades in those courses, A's and B's, of course, preferable. But we've gotten a lot of questions like, well, I have 1W or I have 1C in this class. Can I still apply? Of course you can apply. Any student can apply. The things that Christine mentioned are just the things that will make you more competitive for admission. And so when we're reviewing applications, we review all the applications together, sort of reviewing all students as part of this pool of applicants. And so meeting those minimum requirements will just make you more competitive for admission. And so that's why you want to follow the guidelines that we have on the website.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, in addition to classes and obviously doing well, we do like to see full-time enrollment. Full-time enrollment for students at the engineering school here. Typically an engineer is taking anywhere between 15 and 18 units a semester, so we recommend that students take about 4 classes a semester at their schools. And that's just kind of a rough guideline, but it really does help us to understand your preparation for the engineering program when we see full-time enrollment at that level of 4 classes a semester.
Cool. Thanks for the overview. This might be repeating a few things, but we have dozens of questions where someone is asking about GPA. And so could we dive a little deeper into, let me just give you some versions of how these questions are being phrased. What's the minimum GPA? What if I got a really high GPA but low grades in my science classes? What if I have a 4.0 GPA but I have less than 30 semester units? What's the average GPA? Do I need a strong GPA? Do I, we've got a lot of really great questions here. And this is, I think Samuel asked this question in multiple ways. In one form, he asked, is there a GPA cutoff? How heavily does GPA weigh in on the admission decision? And would a low high school GPA affect the admission decision? So I'm throwing a lot at you to unpack as far as GPA goes, but could you explain how GPA is not really the most important thing, but explicitly what we're looking for?
Yeah, in terms of GPA, I think it's a big myth for most, as you can see with a lot of the questions the students are asking. They think GPA is much more important than I think it actually is. GPA doesn't tell us if you're prepared. And let's just kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier. You know that we want to see Calculus 2, and we want to see, we prefer to see 2 semesters of lab-based science. We also like to see full-time coursework. You could have a 4.0 and not have taken calculus 2. You could have a 4.0, but you might only enroll in one class this semester. And you know, that having a 4.0 with just one class a semester really doesn't give us the full context of if you're prepared. So what we're mostly interested in is if you're taking the right classes, doing well in them, and in a rigorous course schedule. You know, you can have 2 students with the same GPA of a 3.0. One student can be on an upward trend as they go along their math and science courses, for instance, and another student could be on a downward trend as they get higher in the math and science courses. And that's why, you know, when we look at files, GPA doesn't tell you a whole lot. You have to see context. You have to understand really what you're dealing with, and that's why we don't have a GPA cutoff. Becky, I know this is a question you get a lot, and I hear you answer the question a lot. Do you want to add anything to that?
I mean, one thing I have told students in the past is we have offered admission to 2.6s and not offered admission to 4.0s for exactly those reasons that Christine has said. We had a student who only took general education courses, had no math or science, and was applying to an engineering major. Well, that student is not prepared for engineering, where we've had students who, you know, not everyone comes from sort of the same place where, you know, some students go straight on into college. Some students maybe didn't do too well in high school, started college, had a really rocky start, left college, started a family, now they're going back. And while their previous college coursework was well below, you know, sort of what we're looking for in a student, their last few semesters have been straight A's in engineering prepared coursework because they're a little bit older, they're a little bit more focused. Those students have a good chance of being admitted because of what they are doing now, what their most recent semesters show, even though their overall GPA will always be haunted by those earlier semesters. And so that's why the GPA, although it's an indication of how a student's doing, you know, and doing well or just doing in all of their coursework, we focus much more on the math, on the science, and on the most recent coursework that a student has done.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes to the point that, you know, we conduct, I don't think I actually said, we conduct a holistic review of your application. So we don't have a cutoff with GPA or unit counts or anything like that. We are really trying to get to know you and your story. And I think that's why we can feel comfortable admitting a student, maybe, I know which student you're talking about, Becky, who had like a 2.6 GPA, because we knew their story and we saw the vast improvement and the turnaround. And we didn't get stuck on the fact that GPA was a little bit lower than maybe you might typically see of this applicant, because they completely turned it around in the last, I think they had 4 or 5 semesters of really strong work. And so we didn't get caught up in the fact that they had a rocky start.
I think to summarize everything is that while as a student you are rightfully trying to make sure that you're doing the best you can to prepare yourself as an applicant, that doesn't necessarily get answered by a number in your GPA. When we're reviewing applications, we are reviewing your entire application and taking into consideration everything that you have done and everything that you haven't done. And so that's incredibly important to us. We're trying to make sure that you are prepared for our academic curriculum. And so the minimum courses that have been described, the math and science, those are incredibly important, because if you've done poorly in those, then we can't put you into engineering classes, because that's just not helpful to you. It's not going to work out if we put you into higher level classes that you're not going to be successful in. So your opportunities at your university that you're at right now is pay attention to the things we're telling you, pay attention to the classes we're recommending for you to take. Take those classes, do well in those. When students do that, they're almost always admitted, and they're very successful here at USC. We're very clear-cut about this. This is not a game. This is not any type of misleading information. We're not trying to say there isn't a number. It's just that there really isn't a number. We're not trying to avoid your question. There just really is not a number, because if we gave you one, it would be very misleading. There have been, what's interesting is as we were asking that question, we had other questions saying, yeah, but what's the minimum GPA for aerospace engineering? So as applies to all of our academic majors, it's not like there's one GPA for aerospace versus computer science versus anything else. And if you take a look at our website, viterbiadmission.usc.edu/transfer, you can see much more information about the specific courses that we're asking you to be prepared for. Can we discuss really quickly that misconception that sometimes people think that they need 2 years at their previous institution before transferring?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know a lot of the UCs and CSUs in California require that you have 60 units or basically 2 years at another school.
The UCs being the University of California system, the CSUs being the California State University system.
Yes. And so they often require 2 years of coursework before you can even dream about applying. Again, USC is different because we do not have a minimum unit requirement. We have many students who transfer after just 1 year at their other institution. Students who transfer after just 1 year at another institution will have Calculus 2 or more, but at least Calculus 2 in progress by the spring of this semester. So if you're thinking about transferring to USC and you were thinking, oh, I have to do 2 years at my community college or another 4-year institution, you can actually transfer after just 1 year, the way we've structured it. We are eager and happy to have transfer students here at USC. And so we don't have this threshold where you have to wait until you get that 2-year mark again. You can do it in 1 year if you follow our requirements and recommendations. Calc 2, get that done, the USC writing requirement, and also we strongly recommend those 2 semesters of a lab-based science.
And kind of going along the lines of the UCs and the CSUs, one of the questions that came in was how many GE classes are students supposed to take? And I know for those schools, you have to complete all of your general education courses. And for USC, you don't need to complete any, or at least for Viterbi. And so if you were to go onto the main admission website and see what the transfer requirements are, they do mention general education courses. But for us, if you're applying to Viterbi, we would much rather see your math and your science classes, because that's going to better prepare you for 75% of the courses you're going to take. Yes, you will have to take general education courses, and yes, you can transfer in general education courses, but there is no requirement. We don't care if you take any. But to have a full schedule of 4 or 5 classes each semester, you're going to take a math, a science, a writing, and then fill the rest with GEs, but focus much more on the math and the science.
Yeah.
There's been some great questions about the process of being at a university or college that is the quarter system versus the semester system. Almost all the questions are phrased in different ways, but the real question is, how does this work? What does it mean? How does credit transfer? What's going on with our quarter? Because we are a semester system here at USC. How does it work when you're coming from a quarter system?
Yeah, so if you're at a quarter school, I mean, essentially what you want to be doing is engaging in math every single quarter that you're there. So just if you're planning on doing transfer after 1 year, I usually typically recommend taking math every single quarter. And the science, instead of 2 semesters of a lab-based science, usually you're looking at 3, just kind of equal out to the semester system that we have here. But it's, we have plenty of students who come from quarter system schools, and it works out just fine in terms of being competitive for admission. We're looking for that math and science engagement primarily. So it's definitely doable. Again, the reason we typically recommend maybe 3/4 of us, 3 semesters, 3/4 of science at another school is usually because that's how it's going to transfer in properly. So that's usually where you want to be if you want to get transfer credit. If you just took 2 quarters, you're probably missing 1/3 of key information that you need. So if you were admitted, you'd have to take it here.
And to add on top of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, but probably the best reference, because every school is different, is just Google USC articulation histories and see specifically how your courses in a particular quarter will match up to our semester classes. And if we have an equivalent, sometimes it'll be these 2 quarter classes will equal 1 semester here. It'll show you specifically class by class, but there isn't a general rule of exactly it's always this many quarter classes for this semester, right?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Probably the best thing to do is to go to the articulation history. Understand it's a history of courses that have transferred in the past. So not every class is going to be on there, but you can get to those articulation histories from the transfer website. So viterbiadmission.usc.edu/transfer, and try and find the link to articulation histories, and it'll, you put in the school you're at and you put in the semester or the quarter that you were there, and it'll tell you exactly what courses will transfer or won't transfer. And again, if it's not on there, that just means that no one has tried to transfer in the past. But that's the best way to sort of understand, okay, if I take these 2 quarters of math, that equals the first semester of calculus at USC. And so you'll have a better idea on what will transfer in.
Great. This is a somewhat connected question, but Bailey, previously, I hope Julio, you asked a very specific question about that, so I hope that answered along with Samuel, Khalid, and Vincent, all regarding quarters. I think that we got some good coverage there. But Bailey asked a question in the middle of that was about whether we consider the difficulty of the school attended as part of our admission decision. I think that goes back to that articulation history thing, equivalency of the classes. It's not necessarily true that one university is harder than another university, but it's all about the specific courses that you're taking based on the articulated equivalency with our courses. So make sure that you're taking the appropriate classes that we recommend. That means that you can be enrolled local community college, taking the appropriate classes and do quite well. You can go to a 4-year, really expensive private university and take classes that are not anywhere near appropriate because they don't have matching equivalents. Just because you think that one university is better than the other, if you're in the wrong classes, it doesn't matter. So it's about the right classes. Again, I know we are going to sound like a broken record. Take the classes that we are recommending. It's not necessarily about the pattern in which you take them or the what year it was or how many credits you have necessarily. It's about whether you've taken them or not and whether you've done well. Joseph asked a really good question. There's a few others here that some people might be seeking admission to the spring semester. Can we talk about how we do not accept applications for the spring semester, but how this all gets ironed out?
Yeah, Becky, you want to take that one?
Sure. So USC undergraduate programs, we do not have an application for the spring semester. So you can only apply for the fall. So the next semester that a student could start would be fall of 2017, this upcoming August. Every year, a handful of students who apply for the fall of 2017 will be admitted to the spring of 2018, but you cannot apply for the spring semester. So it's just something that happens when a student applies for fall. They might actually get admitted to the spring semester, but you can't actually apply for the spring semester.
Yeah, we don't have a wait list at USC, and so instead of a wait list, rather than saying, oh, we'll only admit you if someone drops off for fall, we actually say we like you, because we do. The spring is an option, but again, you can't apply for the spring semester. It's something that we move you into.
Okay, cool. Now, we have a number of our viewers that are actually international students, and we have some really interesting questions here regarding the TOEFL. So this is the test of English proficiency, and that they've got this TOEFL grade, they've got this TOEFL score, this TOEFL score. Do I have to submit my IELTS or TOEFL scores? So what's the story with TOEFL? What's the story with IELTS? What's our policy?
I know Becky's dying to answer this because she was just talking about it.
Christine may have more information, but as far as I know, you either need to submit the TOEFL or the IELTS test. It needs to be within the last 2 years. Those scores can come in after February 1st. I don't know, Christine may know if there's any reasons why a student would not have to submit it.
No, yeah, that's actually a great follow-up question, which is a lot of times students, international students whose first language is not English, often say, well, I've been in the States for, high school and college. Do I actually still need to take the English proficiency exam? Yeah, you do. That's a university requirement. That's not our rule in this office. That's a university requirement. You got to do it. So either the TOEFL, IELTS, or PTE exam, any one of those will work. We're not looking for a minimum score per se. What happens, and you can go onto the USC admission website and look at the scores the thresholds that they have on there, but those aren't minimums to be admitted. If you're below a certain threshold for a given exam, that just means you might need to take an English proficiency exam here at USC that would determine if you have to take English classes here. That's it. So we're not looking for a minimum score, but you do need to submit a score that is been taken in the last 2 years, and it can come in after the deadline, as Becky said, soon after the deadline.
Right. I think there's a number of things to consider. That a lot of questions have come up about, like, do I have to have every one of these things submitted on February 15th? One of those, as an international student, the financial statement. I'm sorry, February 1st. Did I say February 15th? Excuse me. Sorry, I'm obviously not all. But do I have to have all these things on the first, like in your hands at that moment? And I think a lot of people don't understand that your application file, you got to get your application in. And there's some things that can kind of trickle in a little bit afterwards, but realizing that if we're missing things, we won't be able to make an admission decision. So for international students, there's a financial statement that you have to submit. If you don't have that on February 1st, that's fine, but you should get it in there because we won't be able to admit you without it. So there's so many things that are pretty tricky. And one thing that kind of lines up with that is, can we talk about how we review, why we may review these students' spring grades after they've applied, like the quarter or the semester that they're in right now?
Yeah, sometimes we're able to make an admission decision just with all the academic information that we have for a student in their file. There are some students, usually students who are applying after just 1 year at their school. Usually we need at least to see their spring grades. So the university will sometimes ask to see their spring grades before they issue a decision. So you want to be sure that you're always working your hardest, whether you think you're hearing back with an admission decision or you're getting a request for spring grades. But it does happen sometimes where we do need to see those spring grades before the university can make a decision. Anything else, Becky, that I missed on spring?
Well, just one thing I want to mention is we've had a lot of questions about the mid-year report. And if students need to submit that, basically just make sure you submit your fall grades. And for students on the quarter system, fall and winter, you're going to want to get those in. We definitely cannot make a decision without your fall grades, or for quarter students, fall and winter. And like Christine said, for some students, if you're in your second year or multiple years, we may be able to make a decision just based off of, the fall being your most recent semester. But for, a lot of the students who are in their first year of college, we will need those spring grades just because we would like to have 2 semesters of college coursework before we make that decision. So you may hear from us on or before May 31st requesting those spring grades.
Great. Switching gears slightly, I got a lot of things. I'm watching the questions fly in. There's some good ones I'm going to come back to, but I had a whole trend here that I was kind of filtering on, which was high school. And there's a few questions that are coming up, and I think they're all answered with really one basic answer. So I'm going to just throw them at you guys. What if I'm doing well in college? Will a low high school GPA affect my admission decision?
No.
SAT or ACT scores? How do SAT and ACT scores impact my decision as a transfer student? Or what if I did really well in high school and maybe I'm not doing so well in college? These are all questions. I'm sure they're all asking for friends. It has nothing to do with.
Right. Well, I think, yeah, those are all getting at the same thing, which is the reason we ask to see your high school transcripts is because we need to verify that you graduated high school. Whether you are a 4.0 student in high school or something less, that's really not what we're interested in. As a transfer student, you're applying from one college to another, so we're most interested in your college level coursework. So that's what we care most about. And your most recent coursework is of particular interest to us as well. Again, the reason we ask for that high school transcript, got to verify that you graduated, or you can also have taken the GED. And then what you did in high school
proficiency examination, just some sort of equivalency to a high school diploma.
Yes. If I lost my train of thought, but sorry. I think that was good. So.
Then the other thing is, there was a question here. It was a follow-up. Mona was watching and asked the question. So if, based on what we're talking about, it being admitted to a spring semester or a future semester, the question is, will you still be able to complete courses at a community college until admission?
Yes, absolutely. So if you are admitted for the spring semester, then you have your fall. You have your fall to do with what you choose. We definitely recommend continuing to take courses. Courses that will transfer to USC because for your degree, because that will just, make sure you're graduating in the amount of time that you expect to. But yeah, that fall semester is yours. We do recommend that you continue taking courses just to get more classes complete.
Yeah, and by the way, shout out to Mona. She was here, I think, for transfer day on Friday. Also on that note about being able to take classes in the fall. Also, if you're admitted to USC in the fall, you can still take classes in the summer. That came up in transfer day. Someone wanted to know, could they continue taking classes in the summer up to them transferring to USC. And you absolutely can. That summer is yours if you wish to spend it taking differential equations instead of, I don't know, doing something, like a vacation. That's fine.
Great. Shifting gears slightly, we've got a good number of questions. Brooke is asking about it. KC is asking about it. Joshua is asking a similar question. Tiffany's asking. They're asking about housing. How does housing work for transfer students?
Yeah, so housing is not guaranteed for transfer students at USC, but it is on a first come, first served basis. And so I do know transfer students every year who have secured housing through USC. But that said, most students who are transfer students actually prefer to live in, it seems like from my experience, it seems that they like to live in non-university housing, which at USC, for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to visit, non-university housing is still like across the street from campus. In fact, they've built some of these apartments that are non-university housing apartments to look and match USC's brick facade kind of feel that we have going on here. So a lot of students tend to think that the apartments across the street from campus are owned by the university, and they're not. They're full of USC students, but they're actually not even owned by the university. And if you kind of look around, probably particularly the north side of campus, it's full of a lot of private apartments, and again, full of USC students. And I would say, a lot of the services that are available on campus, and just in terms of having a shuttle or drop off, if you're studying late at night and you feel like, oh, I don't really want to make the walk in the rain, as we recently saw, back to my apartment, you can actually get a shuttle or get a car to drive you back to your apartment, or vice versa. But housing is something that you can definitely secure. I've never known a student who didn't come to USC because they couldn't get housing one way or another.
Right. Wow. Every time I come back to you, I'm reading all the questions, and I thought I have a question for you, and then I forgot what it was.
Well, while you find one, I did forget to mention something about the SAT and ACT score, how those play.
Oh, yeah.
Another question. So only students who are under 30 units need to submit an SAT or ACT. And you're under 30 units if you will not have 30 units, including the spring semester. So very few students end up submitting an SAT or ACT. But obviously, if you're going to be under 30 units, even with the spring semester in progress, the university does want to see a test score just to give us a little bit more academic information to work with.
Fantastic. So here's the reason I didn't know what I was going to ask, because it's like a number of different things that I'm kind of summarizing that I know you're going to be able to answer really well and handle a bunch of these questions. The common application has a number of different questions and different reports or forms or counselor reports. Recommendations get brought up a lot, and transfer students are asking, how does this work? What do I answer to questions when it doesn't apply to me? Like when if I've never been enrolled in less than this many units, do I have to say anything? And there's a lot of people that are confused about the questions and what forms we're supposed to fill out. So can we just handle those little house cleaning issues?
Yeah, well, there's a great resource actually on the Viterbi admission website. So if you go to viterbiadmission.usc.edu and then head over to the apply in an admission page, in the transfer section, there's a transfer application checklist, and it outlines everything that you need to submit to complete your application. And in addition to listing what you need to submit, it also lists what you do not need to submit, which include those additional forms that Common App lists. After you've usually gotten to the end of the application, it has all these additional forms and academic evaluator forms. You do not need to submit any of those. Common App is a common application among many universities. Some schools require those. USC does not. So you can just ignore those. Don't worry about those. It's less paperwork for you. So that's some good news. And there was another piece of the question. I forget what it was.
The short answer question. There's one short answer question that asks, if there's a semester or quarter that you have not been enrolled in for semester unit courses or 3 quarter unit courses, why weren't you enrolled in that many classes? For the majority of you, you will have been enrolled full-time. So that question does not apply to you. If you do need to fill out something in order, if it's a mandatory field that you need to fill out, just put NA. That is fine. If it doesn't apply to you, just put NA and move on. So you only need to fill it out if you were, for some reason, not enrolled full-time for a fall or spring semester. Summer does not count. We don't expect you to be in classes in the summer, so that question does not apply to the summer semester.
And I want to be clear, that question isn't meant to penalize the students who weren't enrolled. We wanted a way to remind students to tell us their story about why they weren't enrolled potentially full-time. We don't know what you don't tell us. So if there's some background to why you were unable to enroll as a full-time student in a given semester, we'd like to know. So, you can just, it's a pretty straightforward question. If it doesn't apply to you, as Becky said, you can put not applicable, NA. But if it does apply to you, just give us your story and the context. It usually helps us review your file in a more informed way. And then in addition to the website that has the checklist, we also have frequently asked questions section on our transfer website that deals specifically with application questions as well. So if you have a chance, head over there after this live chat, viterbiadmission.usc.edu/transfer. The FAQs are at the bottom.
Great. Let's switch over a little bit more to financial aid. There are a number of questions about financial aid. Can either one of you give us a brief overview of how financial aid works and when that process starts and what they're supposed to do? Basically, there's a lot of stuff to get into after that, but let's start with a summary there.
Yeah, financial aid, you guys can start applying now. If you aren't independently wealthy and will need help paying for college, you're going to want to go through that need-based financial aid process. You will want to work directly with the financial aid office. We are a need-blind admission office, so the three of us never look at your financial aid information or documents, so you're going to want to work really closely with the financial aid office. The three things that they are going to require is the FAFSA, the CSS profile, and tax information, and you can start filling those out now. You're going to want to get those in. You're not going to want to wait until you hear from us. You're going to want to get those in, basically now, the month of February and March, because once decisions are made, then the financial aid will start packaging those financial aid packages and get them out to you. If you wait until April or May or June when you hear of an admission decision, it might be too late. They might be out of funds for the year. So you're going to want to get those documents in before you hear back on an admission decision.
Yeah, the financial aid process, basically, here's my recommendation. Complete the entire admission application. Get all of your paperwork in, finish that. The minute you're done with that, then start working on the financial aid process as Becky described. The FAFSA, the CSS profile. Go to the financial aid website, financialaid.usc.edu. It'll outline everything that you need to do along with some recommended deadlines. But you should recognize that the financial aid office here on campus, as we are need blind, there's a firewall between the Office of Admission and the Office of Financial Aid. And the Office of Financial Aid will not start to create a package for you until you are admitted. So one of the questions is, can I meet with financial aid before I apply? You're more than welcome to, but they won't be able to tell you anything about your situation until you're actually admitted, because they won't be able to give you those packages. That said, on their website, financialaid.usc.edu, there is the net price calculator. And I would encourage every one of you to go check out the net price calculator for USC, where you can submit some really basic information to understand your current financial situation and how that has traditionally been treated with our large need-based financial aid budget. And it gives you some good parameters. It doesn't give you an exact amount, but it gives you a good sense of how you're likely to be rewarded, or be accommodated for in our financial aid process. Now that said, there's a great question about here from international students. Can international students get need-based financial aid? No, international students cannot get need-based financial aid. You have to be a U.S. citizen. But you are, if you apply, just keep in mind that we are considering students for some select scholarships as well. Okay, Christine, can you talk a little bit about the merit scholarship process? And the merit scholarship process is different than need-based financial aid.
Yeah, whenever any student who submits their application by February 1st will automatically be considered for a transfer merit-based scholarship. The transfer merit-based scholarship, it covers up to a quarter of tuition, so it's a pretty large award. There is nothing additional you need to do to be considered for the merit-based scholarship. You just submit your application by February 1st, and we'll automatically consider you for those merit-based scholarship opportunities.
Great. Anthony asked a very specific question that I'm going to throw out to both of you as it's written, and then you tell me whether we need to give him the bad news or not. Anthony I have consistently been a 4.0 student, but this last semester I performed poorly and my GPA dropped to a 3.66. Should we just tell him he's not going to be admitted?
Yeah, I mean, on live broadcast.
Anthony, as we've talked about, it's never that simple.
Right.
And as we've talked about in the beginning of this, if you missed it, the recording will be up on the same page. Go back and watch the opening where we talk about GPA and how it's not necessarily about a GPA. It's about the classes that you've taken and the grades you've achieved. And so we want to make sure that you're doing well. Now, it's always about the whole picture. So there's no way for us to tell you whether something will be dramatically hurt in your question. Chances don't get dramatically hurt by one semester unless all of a sudden you just failed everything that was related to engineering, which with a 3.6 it doesn't sound like you were. So I think a 3.6 is a pretty good GPA.
And I would just add, Christine had mentioned earlier, we don't know what we don't know. You know, we need just more information to understand where a student's coming from. And so if you have a situation like this or another situation where maybe your grades were affected, giving us information, why did that happen? What was going on during finals? You know, and of course, give us as much information as you're comfortable sharing. But again, if your grades dropped one semester, did you just get really lazy, or was there a reason? Did you have mono? Did you have family problems? You know, is there a reason for what was going on? And again, we don't know anything unless you tell us. And so getting that additional information can always be helpful, so that we know your backstory and we know, the circumstances kind of surrounding that.
Great. There are a few questions here about W's on transcripts. Let's address W's on transcripts and how they're not your friend.
Yeah. W's should be avoided. That said, if you do have, maybe as Becky said earlier, if you have one or two earlier in your career, okay, just cut it out. But
cut it, meaning stop doing it. You're not saying remove it from your application.
Right. No, don't remove it from your application.
That sounded like you just said cut it out. Like
the transcript.
Yeah, Christine, I don't think you're being very helpful right now.
No, don't cut it out as in, but no more W's. But you should avoid W's. I know. When the drop period for school comes up, I sometimes have a couple students who will call and say, well, I might get like a B- or C in this class. Do you think I should drop it or stay in it? I usually tell them, no, stay in the class and get a strong grade of an A or B. That's the best case scenario. W's or grades below a B- or below, those aren't necessarily the strongest grades. So the best thing is to avoid W's. And shoot for A's and B's typically. But that said, going back to the last question that Paul gave us, where the GPA was slipping a little bit, according to I guess the applicant. We need context. So if you do have maybe one W here or there, having the context is important to us. And if it's not an overall trend of yours, that's different than a student who is a serial withdrawer. Because we want you to come to USC and be able to handle full course load without withdrawing here.
Yeah, W's on your transcript show us in a different way that you're having trouble in classes. And so while you think you're saving your GPA, you're still just sending a really bad message to us that you are not a reliable and successful student. And that makes us start to question your preparation. As we want you to do well here. It's not about whether we think you're good enough or whether you're smart enough. It's about being prepared for our program so that you can be successful in our program. It does us no good. It does you no good if we're accepting you to just do poorly here. Again, God, I had a great question and I lost it. So good. Oh, yes. We got a few questions here about 3.2. And a lot of our guests on this live chat do not understand 3.2. So can we give an overview of what the 3.2 program is if someone has heard about it?
Sure, right. So the 3.2 program is designed for students at specific four-year institutions, where the students take 3 years of coursework at that school and then apply to transfer to do their final 2 years at USC. It is what at Paul are people who aren't in the 3.2 program, maybe at a community college. Okay, so what
they're saying, like, how do I know whether I'm qualified for 3.2? So like Rukmini is asking, how do I know whether I've done enough credits to qualify for 3.2? you have to be at, sorry, that's why I'm cutting you off. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, but you're going down what I want to say. Like, you have to be at one of our partner schools, and you would know if you were at one of our partner schools.
Yeah, you'd already be in a 3-2 program at that university. Some of the partner schools are
Biola, Gordon College, Westminster College, Salt Lake, Claremont McKenna, etc. So those are some of our partner schools. University of Puget Sound. Those are our partner schools, and students who go to one of those 4-year institutions are typically going there knowing that they want to do it. When they get there, they enroll in it, and then they come to us later. So students who sometimes are asking about 3-2 programs who aren't part of it, sometimes are under the impression that it's actually easier to get into USC as a 3-2 student. Admission is not guaranteed. It's not an easier way in. In fact, it's a longer path in because you have to do 3 years at another school, as opposed to being able to transfer after just one year as a regular transfer student. So that program is specific for specific schools with students who are looking for something very specific from that partner institution in USC. And if you're not at one of those schools, don't worry about the 3-2 program. Your fastest way to transfer to USC is just follow what we've been telling you. Count 2 semesters of lab-based science, get the writing, and then take a challenging curriculum. That's your fast track to USC.
Great, cool. And being at a school that is a 3-2 program, if you've decided that you'd like to transfer earlier, you can.
Yep.
Just like any other transfer student can apply, following all the same advice and the questions that we've handled earlier. There is a question here about academic support. Are there any centers here that help with free peer tutoring, or if students are struggling on classes? I think it's also trying to gauge, what's the student body like? And getting that sense coming from a lot of different universities. I know that we have a different community here. So can we address that idea in general of how our students work together and the support services that we offer?
Sure. We're a pretty small program. So even though USC is always thought of as a large institution, the Viterbi School is a pretty small program. We only bring in about 410 freshmen, and every year we bring in about 120 to 130 transfer students. So we do have a good population of transfer students. Because we are a small program, there's a lot of ways for students to kind of get one-on-one support. Through our office, the Viterbi Admission and Student Affairs Office, we do have an academic resource center. It provides free peer tutoring for students who may be struggling in those higher level math, physics, science courses. So students can go and get a little bit of extra help, just sign up, for an appointment, get a little extra help in those courses. Probably the best place to go to is the source, our faculty. So all of our courses are taught by full-time faculty, and our faculty have what we call office hours, a time when they are sitting in their offices just waiting for students to come in and talk to them. So that is a great time to go and get some extra help from the people who are teaching you. If you have any questions, or if you're not understanding a concept in your class, we do have teaching assistants and graduate assistants that help with the courses, but that's what they do. They help with the courses. And so they also host office hours. So if you can't make it to your faculty office hours, you can maybe go to your TA's office hours. And for some of the classes, the TAs will do something called supplemental instruction. It's one night a week where they will just host an extra class on like a Thursday evening. So students from that class can come and ask questions and get some extra help. So the academic support, is definitely there for students. All you have to do is show up. You have to go and, ask the faculty or the tutors or your TAs just for some extra help. I mean, like Paul was kind of saying, where it does no good to admit a student who won't be successful here. I mean, our goal and your goal is to bring you in, get you educated, and get you to graduate. I mean, that's what we want to do. We want to see you guys come in and do well academically so that you can graduate and move on to jobs or graduate programs. And so the academic support is definitely there for you, if you need it in some of your courses.
And in addition to all the resources that Becky mentioned, another great resource are your peers, your classmates. This is a very collaborative work environment. It is competitive to be admitted, but once you're here, your classmates are your buddies. That's your peer group who you'll be working with on group projects, and it is a very collaborative work environment. If you need help with a particular class, you'll go to your classmates. That this is a place where students help each other. So that's just kind of a key thing about our curriculum, is that it is a very collaborative work environment.
This is a great question that I think addresses a lot of people's concerns, and I'm going to do it word for word. Aditya wrote this earlier this morning. How can I make my application much more appealing to admission? Any specific areas to be improved upon?
That's funny because Becky and I were actually talking about another student who said, like, just give me the formula for admission.
Yeah, what do I got to do? Well, I always say, as long as it's a certain font size, I'm not going to tell you what it is.
Yep.
You got to make
Not Comic Sans.
definitely not Comic Sans. I'll tell you that much. Don't write anything in Comic Sans. Go ahead. I'm cutting out.
But what we're looking for, I think we've already been talking about for nearly this past hour. It's the right courses. As a transfer applicant, the most influential piece of your application is your academic section. It's not to say that we don't conduct a holistic review. I think we've covered pretty extensively how much we value and want to see all the context of what you're doing. But as a transfer student, you're coming from one college to another. So the best way for us to figure out if you're prepared to transfer is to look at your previous college coursework. And that's why there's probably a shift between applying as a transfer student and maybe applying as a student right out of high school. The emphasis is now shifted to the academics a bit more than maybe the other stuff that maybe you were concerned about when you were applying to college out of high school. Academics is the key thing. You could be involved in, I don't know, 8 different clubs on your campus, but if you can't do well in your courses, we don't really care that you were in 8 different cool student orgs. We want to see that you can hack the curriculum, and that's more important to us than extracurriculars and different things like that. So when you're thinking about what you can do to be a competitive applicant, focus on what we've talked about. Take the right courses, Calc 2 semesters of lab-based science, the writing requirement. Challenge yourself, take four classes a semester is ideal, and then do well, A's and B's. Of course, we want to see the other stuff, but that's the main thing.
Great. I'm going to do a couple rapid fire questions that I'll try to answer quickly, and then we'll get back to another one about how students, classes, professors, the environment as well. So if you guys think about that for a second. Madura, you asked a question about an art portfolio, and you believe that it's essential to understanding who you are. Well, hopefully you've listened so far that we're much more interested in the courses that you're taking and your performance in those classes. So we're not asking for any art portfolio as part of your application, and there's no opportunity to submit that in the application. So just work through your Common App, do your best to express everything of who you are and what you do in the questions that are asked you the Common App. But as you've noticed so far, we are increasingly more focused on your academic performance in particular courses as a transfer student. This is a very different process than when you applied last year as a freshman. And also spring semester courses, I think we've already answered this, but just to make sure, we will likely be reviewing and requesting spring grades before we make admission decisions if you're in some critical classes that we need to see. Second, I had a quick one that I wanted to kill off real quick. Majid, you asked about your UW, University of Washington classes and what are the equivalents for. You can go directly to the USC articulation history and look at those classes and see what their equivalents for. And then the other thing is, this is the class I want you guys to address. It's asking about like class sizes and what are classes like? What's the philosophy? What are the students like? Which you already started talking about. But then how does that work with professors? Are professors available? Do they make themselves available? What's the ratio like? Do they work with students on research? How do we explain what the student to professor kind of environment is like?
Sure. Well, the average class size at USC is 26, but of course that's average, and a lot of it depends on the courses that you're in. So for your engineering courses, it depends on the major. Is it one of our larger majors? Is it one of our smaller majors? But for the most part, intro courses and sort of lower level courses are between 35 to 40, depending on your major. They could be as little as 10 students in your class. So that's going to be, your engineering courses. Things like math and science. At USC, we actually teach those through the math and science department. So it's not chemistry for engineers. It's chemistry, and students from all majors can take those courses. And so those courses might be a little bit larger, maybe 50 to 80 students in the lecture, and then they all come with discussion sections or lab sections. And so those are going to be a lot smaller, maybe 20 to 25 students in those. General education courses could, of course, be upwards of 150 students, depending on the class. Some are going to be very popular, and so those courses are going to be a little bit larger. Classes that are not as popular or are offered at unpopular times, like 8 a.m., those might have 20 students in the class. So it really depends on a lot of things. But for the most part, courses are relatively relatively small. Professors, like I mentioned, a lot of them, or they have office hours, so you can go and talk to them. There are times when they are accessible. And of course, it depends on the professor. I know I walk around campus and I see professors eating lunch with their undergraduate students all the time. And so depending on the professor and their schedule, some may be more accessible than others, but they do all offer office hours where you can go and talk to them. We are a research institution. A lot of those professors are doing research, and we do have undergraduate students doing research in a lot of our labs. And some of those positions are received through scholarship programs. And for most of our students, they just email faculty that they're interested in doing research with, setting up a time to meet and talk about why they're interested in that, why they want to go work in their labs, and maybe setting up a time where they can go and do that or become part of the research team. So, they're definitely accessible, and you can just email professors with any questions that you have.
Yeah, I actually knew a transfer student who was admitted over the summer, and before the summer was even over, she had emailed the professor about doing research. So by day one of classes at USC, when I ran into her, she was already headed off to her research lab. So it is as simple as just asking a professor to get involved in research. So very accessible.
Great. Next question. How do we feel about letters of recommendation, and what should students be doing, if anything?
We really don't need letters of rec. If we wanted them, we would straight up ask for them. So you do not need to send them. But inevitably, I kind of feel like the minute I've said this, Paul's probably getting a bunch of questions. But what if I really want to submit one? You can. You still can if you wish. But again, the thing that we're most interested in is your academics. That's what we're primarily keying in on.
Okay, great. How do students go about when they're here if they want to study something more than engineering? Can students double major? What are the minoring opportunities?
Yeah, definitely. Students can double major, they can add minors, they can just take courses in other schools. Just understand, depending on your timeline for when you plan to graduate, adding a second major or a minor may extend your graduation date, but if that is okay with you and with your parents or anyone else who's financially invested in this, that's great. You are more than welcome to take classes in other areas. I think one of the things that we're all firm believers in is engineers who do other things become better engineers. And so we have about 40% of our undergraduate students are pursuing minors in things like music, business, theater, political science, linguistics, languages, so you have a lot of opportunities to take classes in other areas. All of our engineering programs are, if you started here as a first year student, they're 4-year programs. But they're full 4 years. There's a lot of requirements that come with your degree. I mean, you're not applying to engineering because it's easy. You're applying to it because it's something you enjoy doing and it's challenging. And so you do have a lot of course requirements. But our academic advisors will work with you to kind of fit in those other courses that you have interest in taking, maybe fitting in that second major or that minor. Minors are definitely more possible to do in a shorter amount of time, but students do double major. So.
Great. And I wanted to give credit to the very first question that we received, which was when we sent out an invitation to some of you to join us for this. It was from Emily Liu, and she asked the question on December 28th. So it's been sitting in our queue since then. So thank you, Emily Liu, for asking the question. And here is her question. What is a good resource for students to learn more about professors and their ongoing research? And so I will point you back to our website. And this is also a question that was one of the most recent questions that we just got. So it's really kind of funny that we had these bookended questions. The last question that we literally just received as Christine was talking is, can we list or review other ways to look up what we need to transfer and where to find on your website? And also the best way to contact us for last minute questions. It's as if we feeded that question in, but we didn't. Garcia at Whittier. So Anthony, thanks for asking that question. And Emily, thanks for asking that first question. What everyone should know is that this is just one opportunity for you to ask questions. There's another question somewhere along the way, like, hey, can I just stop in and ask you questions? What I'm going to tell you right now is don't just drop in. While we love to talk to you, you might end up coming by when we're not here or when we're in other meetings or we're giving presentations. So don't just drop in. It is incredibly easy just to send us an email, number one, when you have questions, and we'll get back to you. but I wanted to show everybody what our admission website actually looks like. And the Viterbi admission website is a, let's see if everybody can see this appropriately. Can you guys see that okay?
I can, yes.
Okay, cool. So the Viterbi admission website is incredibly helpful. This is viterbiadmission.usc.edu, and it has a lot of helpful information. Number one, we're blogging pretty frequently, so when we have updates, like for example, we were talking about the live chat that was going on today. We have a number of different podcasts, so if you'd like to learn more about our professors and some of the research that they're doing, the classes that they're teaching. If you like podcasts, you can subscribe to our podcast element where we have conversations with faculty, student organizations. There's a lot here. The process to learn more about academic programs, if you go to our academic sections at the top of the window, you can learn more about what we have, see some brochures, and also learn more of each of the individual majors section by section. So for example, this is the computer science and engineering page. It gives you the full course plans for each one of our degree programs. So one of the questions earlier was, what is the difference between computer science and computer science games? Well, you can compare the course plans and see exactly the classes that are different. You can learn more about it with some of the videos that we have. You can meet some more faculty that we have, and you can also just keep digging around in our different academic sections. Also, the Viterbi Experience section outlines more ways that you could do other things beyond just your classes. So if you're interested in, for example, innovation and entrepreneurship, our innovation and entrepreneurship page has a great resource for you to learn more about our competitions, our student organizations, and the opportunities that our students get involved in both entrepreneurial, innovative, and also social entrepreneurial areas. One more resource I want to point to, actually inside of this area, is the applying section. So under applying and admission, you can go straight to the how to transfer page. What you'll notice is that if you read through our transfer website here, everything that we've said tonight was almost as if we were reading it from this page. Practically all of your questions are all answered ahead of time right here. Not only does it tell you about the requirements and transferable classes, not only does it tell you about the transfer plans and how to apply, it also gives you a frequently asked questions section that will line up most of the things that you already asked in the chat today. And we have all of our answers in here, and some of them are kind of funny. So you can check that out, jump on in, see what's going on. This is the 3-2 question that we talked about earlier. This is the apply for spring question that we talked about. This is the average GPA question that we talked about. This is whether there's one version of a better university that we talked about or not. This is the, do I have to fill out this form versus this registrar report? It's all here. If you get through that and you have more questions, then you can come on over and contact us with no problem. The idea of being able to contact us is incredibly simple. You can just email us at viterbi.admission@usc.edu or click on the contact us at our website. Beyond that, I want you to check out this link called Meet the Students, and Meet Students sends you over to Viterbi Voices. Viterbi Voices is a completely student-developed website that they are blogging regularly. Some of our current students, they talk about their student organizations, their free time, and they also have a link over to the podcast because we produce the podcast in joint efforts with them. So subscribe to the podcast called Viterbi Voices. You can go to your podcast app on your phone, or you can go to whatever podcast device that you like to listen to, whether that's iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud. Search for Viterbi Voices, and you can dig in and learn a little bit more about our program with in-depth interviews and conversations. So I hope that helps you all out. I hope that gives you a good sense of what our school is about. The web resources are all there. viterbiadmission.usc.edu, viterbivoices.usc.edu. All the answers are there. If you have other questions beyond that, email us at viterbi.admission@usc.edu. But also recognize we've answered a good amount of questions. If you just chimed in late, the recording will all be up at the same location on our website for you to get more information a little bit later. So with that, it is a little after 5 o'clock. Thank you so much for joining us. Anything else you ladies want to say that I missed?
No, I think we covered it.
Thank you so much, everybody. We look forward to receiving your applications by February 1st as a transfer applicant, and make sure that you do well in your remaining classes at whatever university you're at. Fight on.
Fight on.